Hello friends, welcome back to our channel High Point. So we were discussing about the history of English literature. We were going through various ages that is included in, or that we could find in history of English literature one by one, starting from Anglo-Saxon period. We have seen up to the Restoration age. So let me just brush up for you briefly. So from Anglo-Saxon period, starting from Anglo-Saxon period, after that we have Anglo-Norman period from 1066 to 1340, and after Anglo-Norman period we have Chaucer's period from 1340 or from the middle of the 14th century to 1400. And after Chaucer's period we have the Age of Revival. We saw Age of Revival and its main features and main literary trends and eminent people of the age. This Age of Revival starts from 1400 to it extends up to 1550. So after 1550 we have the Elizabethan age. It is the golden age of literature. So we have seen all the major characteristics as well as major events, socio-political and cultural events and literary trends and major authors of the age. And after Elizabethan age there is a very small age before Puritan age, before the next age, that is the Jacobean age from 1603 to 1625. And after this small age of Jacobean age we have Puritan age that comes after Jacobean age. It starts from 1625 to and ends in 1660 with the restoration of monarchy. And from 1660 we to 1700 we have what is known as the Restoration age, where what is restored, monarchy was restored and the theatre got reopened, and drama was the highest genre or the major genre or literary trend of that particular age. So what comes after Restoration age, and the three next coming ages will be discussing in this particular video. Okay, so now let's continue with our discussion about history of English literature. We will as always we will be discussing socio-political, cultural characteristics, literary trends and major authors. Okay. The next age that comes after the Restoration age is Neoclassical age or Augustan age, and it is from 1700 to 1798. Okay, so Restoration age was from 1660 to 1700. Please remember these rough time periods. Okay, it is not exactly that the Restoration age ended in 1700 and the Neoclassical age consciously started in 1700. No, but when we see the peculiarity, the peculiarities, the socio-political aspects and the literary trends going on during that age, we roughly we means the critics, those who have studied it early, they actually categorized it such a way. So Neoclassical age starts from 1700 and it ends in 1798. Okay, so why it is named as Augustan age? Okay, most of you must know this reason. The term Augustan age comes from the self-conscious imitation of the original Augustan age of Rome. So why this age got Augustan age? The name Augustan age, why it is labeled as Augustan age? It is labeled because the authors of this particular age, the poets of this particular age especially, they imitated mainly the original Augustan age of Rome. So in Rome there is a age known as Augustan age, in which King Augustus Octavius Augustus was the ruler, and during his reign there were many ancient classical writers were there, like Virgil, Horace and all. So they were imitating these 18th century writers of England. They were consciously imitating the themes, the way of writing of these particular writers. They were consciously doing it. So that's why this particular age got the name Augustan age. Got it? It's as simple. And another name given to this age is Age of Reason. Why it got such a name, Age of Reason? because we can see a kind of strive for harmony and precision in this age. Especially in literature, writers actually strived, they struggled, and they actually considered more than anything harmony, more than any other literariness, more than the imagination, more than anything else, harmony and precision. I mean, clarity, or clarity of thought, harmony, or it's not that in neoclassical age you just cannot write too subjective emotional things. We cannot see such kind of themes in the works of neoclassical age writers, because they were too much about form, they were too much conscious, and they were striving for harmony, and they were striving for precision, clarity, and such things, more than literariness, more than emotion, more than subjective thoughts. These things, form was given more importance. So that's why this age also known as age of reason. And neoclassical age, that name comes from after the conscious imitation of classical writers. Okay, they were after making their works just like the classical writers' works. So that's why they were actually reviving the classical themes and classical way of writing and all. That's why the age got the name neoclassical. So far I think it is clear how the age got its name. Neoclassical, Augustan age, and age of reason. So the writers of this age believed that man was an imperfect being whose potential was very limited. So it's not that they considered man as the super being and all, but neoclassical writers believed that man was an imperfect being. So man is an imperfect being, and his potential, human being's potential, was limited, or it is limited. So such a belief we could see, such a vein of belief we could see throughout the works of the authors of this particular age. And another major thing happened. What was the situation of British or British Empire? I already told you, British or Britain as an empire, it was growing, it was inventing, or it was actually finding many sea routes and land routes as well, and it reached to people from Britain, or especially from Europe, reached to other unknown lands in the previous ages and all. So they were doing adventures, voyages and all. So as a result, they colonized many non-European lands. So we also know that in the 18th century itself, towards the end of this century, towards the end of 18th century, or in the second half of the 18th century, Indian subcontinent, this territory also got colonized by British Empire. So in that way, in many other places, especially African countries, African territories, Latin American territories, or many more other territories got colonized by British Empire or by European countries, especially in the 18th century. So British Empire was growing enormously. So that actually funded, or that actually that the tax from British Empire, I mean the colonies, the cash flow from colonies financed the Industrial Revolution in Britain or in Europe as such. So there, along with the growth of British Empire, Britain was becoming more and more an industrial country. Factories were establishing, and it was like they were growing as an industrial revolution from a agricultural society. All of a sudden, or slowly we can say that after the establishment of British Empire, what we can see that Britain was becoming an industrial revolution. So because of this prosperity, population was also increased drastically. The number of population increased drastically. Okay, that was the major change that we could see in Britain. So internally, or we cannot see any kind of internal wars, important wars and struggles and rebellions. There were, little bit things were there, but still, like in the earlier times, like we could see like 100 years of war or Cade's rebellion, such rebellions were not there, but there were problems as the society was becoming more and more industrial society. And Matthew Arnold called 18th century as an age of prose and reason. So Matthew Arnold belongs to the age of Victorian, age of English literature. He was a great poet and critic, and he labeled the age as the century, 18th century, as the age of prose and reason for these reasons, because they were mainly after they strived for harmony and precision. They were mainly about the form, not to the content, and they were mainly the prose. Many genres and forms of prose triumphed this age. So because of all these reasons, Matthew Arnold called this age as the age of prose and reason. And we can see qualities of order, clarity, and stylistic decorum. Okay, qualities of order, clarity, and stylistic decorum as prevailing qualities of the age of 18th century, the literature of the 18th century. Okay, Alexander Pope and Samuel Johnson are the most representative writers of the age. So the initial years of the age was represented by Alexander Pope, that is also known as age of Alexander Pope, and also the latter ages, latter years, especially the end part or the second half of the neoclassical age, we can see that is the age of Samuel Johnson. And prose was the major genre of this age. Prose triumphed this age in many forms, in the form of periodicals, in the form of essays, in the form of satires and novels. Prose flourished. Novel as a genre got established and got a rise in this age, particularly anywhere in the world, in the planet. So, in the planet, novel as a genre, in this globe, novel as a genre emerged during the neoclassical age of English literature. So in the field of poetry, heroic couplet was the major form of poetry, or major form of poetry. In the field of drama, very few. Sheridan and Goldsmith has written some of the drama in this age. I mean, She Stoops to Conquer by William Goldsmith, and Sheridan has written The Rivals and all. So they have written sentimental comedies. So in the earlier age, it was heroic dramas and especially comedy of manners. But in here we can see a shift in that genre too. It was comedy of sentiments, or sentimental comedy we can see in the form of drama in this age. Okay, drama was sentimental comedy. So it basically deals with the sentiments of the middle classes. Comedy of manners belongs to, it will portray the upper class society, their way of life, and ridiculing their manners and all. But here we could see the sentiments and lifestyle of the middle class people, where those things were get not ridiculed, but those things will create or generate laughter and comedy and wit. So that's the major shift happened in the field of drama. But drama was not a prominent genre in this age. It was prose, and in poetry it was heroic couplet. But do remember, in the field of drama it was sentimental comedy. Now let's see some of the prominent poets. Who were the prominent poets of the age? Alexander Pope, like I said, Alexander Pope, MacFlecknoe, and many other number of poems and satires, or satires in the form of in poetry also we could see. Then Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray actually belongs to age of sensibility, that we will discuss later. The elegy written in a country churchyard. William Collins, Ode to Evening. Oliver Goldsmith has written some poems as well. He also has written a sentimental comedy known as She Stoops to Conquer. Then Robert Burns. So these are the major prominent poets we could see in this age. And some of the notable novelists are Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift has written many number of essays for periodicals, as well as he has written satires such as The Battle of the Books, and we all are familiar with the Gulliver's Travel, which is written by Jonathan Swift as well. Then Samuel Johnson. Samuel Johnson, he was a great critic, as well as he was the first lexicographer of English who actually made a dictionary for English words in the second half of the 18th century, published it, and he also compiled the lives of poets, and he is famous for preface to Shakespeare, preface to Milton, all those things. Then we all know Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe is very famous. He also has written pamphlets. Then Samuel Richardson. Pamela is one of the first novels ever written. Samuel Richardson's Pamela, Virtue Rewarded, as is its subtitle. Then Laura Stern's Tristram Shandy, Henry Fielding's Tom Jones. All these novels belongs to the first novels ever written in English, or ever written, we could say. So these are some of the notable novelists, and there are some prose writers as well. See, Jonathan Swift and Samuel Johnson, all these people, they have written many pamphlets, okay, but they are popularly known as novelists or satirists and all. Some of the major prose writers were Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. See, we all know that these names are associated to some of the periodicals, Statler and Spectator. So we will discuss that in detail in some other video. Okay. So major prose writers were Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. Then later half of the age, especially from 1750 to 1798, is known as Age of Sensibility. So the second half of the age of Neoclassical age, it is known as Age of Sensibility. Why it is known as Age of Sensibility? Because it had a shift in focus. So in the initial half, or in the first half of the age, we could say that if everything was, decorum was focused, clarity was focused, the reason was focused, and the choices of diction was focused, so that, word choices were focused, the form was given more importance. But in the latter half of the same century, I mean in the 18th century, there is a shift happening, and the focus was shifted from to feelings, imagination, instincts, emotions. So all those things were started to discuss. We can see that it is actually an anticipatory age of sensibility. The latter half, or the second half of the 18th century, is actually anticipating, or it is actually kind of a pre-age of romantic age, as it anticipates some of the qualities of romantic age. And this age is also known as age of transition, or transitional age. Transition age means, some transition is happening there. So from the focus was something else in the first half of the Neoclassical age. From that focus, something is changing, and transition is happening. Focus is transitioning, or focus is changing from the decorum, from clarity, from reason, from the imitation of the classical authors, a conscious imitation of the classical authors, their themes, heroic themes and all. A shift is happening slowly in this age of sensibility. That's why this age is also known as transitional age. So especially Thomas Gray, William Collins, Oliver Goldsmith, Robert Burns, all these poets, and especially the novelists belong to age of sensibility. So age of sensibility means that the sensibilities were given more important. That means imagination, feelings, instincts, and emotion of the poet or the writer or the author, started to emerge in poetry, started to, give importance while writing a poetry or while writing a creative piece. So in that way, transition, a change was happening, a shift in the focus happened. Because of that, this age is known as age of sensibility, or a transitional age, because it anticipates romanticism. This is an anticipatory age of romanticism. Okay. So in 1798, as we have already seen, the neoclassical age came to an end. What happened in this age? You must be knowing this. In 1798, Wordsworth and Coleridge, they together published an anthology of poetry known as Lyrical Ballads. With the publication of that particular anthology, Lyrical Ballads, what happened? This age, this neoclassical age, or Augustan age, or prose and reason, or the age of reason, came to an end. Okay, so the neoclassical age is from 1700 to 1798, almost a century, but the latter half, the second half of the 18th century, is known as age of sensibility for its shift in focus. Okay, there is a transition happening, and more or less like it was moving towards romanticism. So that's why the shift was happening, and this age is known as age of sensibility. Okay, now let's move on to the next stage, known as the romantic age. Romantic age is from 1798 to 1837. 1798, what happened? I just now told you that this year 1798 saw the publication of Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth and Coleridge. So Lyrical Ballads is a collection of poetry done by, or poetries by, poems by Wordsworth and Coleridge. Okay, so romantic age, it was a reaction to industrial revolution. It was actually criticizing industrial revolution. It was actually citing what are the major negative impacts of industrial revolution, how it is affecting nature, how nature is going away from, or how man is going away, human beings are going away from nature, and there is a nostalgia for nature and in natural things, or nature as such in this in the poems that we could see in romantic age. So mainly romantic age emerged as a reaction to the industrial revolution, and it embodied strongly in visual arts, music, literature, and associated with liberalism and radicalism. Okay, so mainly, in neoclassical age, everything was strict. If you want to write a poetry, you have to write it in a certain decorum, in a certain style, in a certain way, in certain form. Choices of words has to be in certain way. Even you cannot choose any other kind of theme that you want to choose to write a poem. Especially the theme must be heroic in nature. So in that way, there were so many restrictions for in literature or in art as such. But when it came or when it comes to romantic age, what happened? There were kind of liberties, and radicalism was happening. It was not simply you no need to follow any other kind of rules. You can write poems the way you want, and you can discuss subjective themes. You can discuss about your own imagination, your own emotion, your own instincts. All those things got a very important place in poetry, especially what are the characteristics of, if you see the characteristics of romantic age or romantic poetry, imagination, subjectivity, escapism, all those things are important. All those things are important characteristics of romantic age poetry or romantic poetry. Okay, and England became most industrialized nation. So by the 18th century or 19th century, we can see that England became the most industrial nation in this globe, and it led to violent class conflict between employers and workers. See, people from villages in search of jobs and all, they started to move from villages to industrialized places. Agrarians or peasants started to migrate to the what we say, migrate to the urbanized places in order to have what? In order to have jobs, wages, money and all. And a certain group of people were employers and workers, and another group of people were workers. Employers were there, workers were there. Those who owns the factory and those who are working in that factory. So in that way, there were many conflicts happening between these employers and workers, rebellions and conflicts, violent class conflicts. So two classes formed, like, upper class, middle class and lower class, because of this industry. So upper class and lower class people, all these two strata were there, but a new kind of middle class was also formed because of this industrialization. So as England became most industrialized nation, it was not that everything was happening positive only for inside that nation, but it also led to violent class conflicts between employers and workers. Workers have to do many jobs. I mean, hectic schedules they have to follow. At the same time, they will get very low wages. And child workers will be there, child labor will be there, and they'll get these children will get very low wages, and employers will actually squeeze the workers, and they won't recognize the the labor the workers are doing and giving them the necessary necessary kind of wages, recognizing their labor. So naturally they will be, and workers will be living in poor conditions, in untidy conditions, and also there will be a kind of general dissatisfaction among the workers. So that will naturally lead to violent class conflicts anyway. So that happened. So who actually named this age as the Romantic Age? It was the German poet Friedrich Schlegel. Okay, Friedrich Schlegel, he was a German poet. Friedrich Schlegel was a German poet, and he actually labeled, he called this particular age as the Romantic Age. He is given credit for using the term romantic to describe the peculiarities of the literature of the age. It was not that he called this age as Romantic Age, but he labeled the peculiarities and the characteristic and the features of this particular age as romantic. That's how this age got the Romantic Age, or got the name the Romantic Age. Friedrich Schlegel, please remember this name. Okay, and what does he do? He defined it as a literature depicting emotional matter in an imaginative form. This is how he actually defined this particular age's literature. Okay, so he defined the literature of this particular age as a literature depicting emotional matter in an imaginative form. So like I said, imagination and emotion, instincts, feelings, subjective kind of thoughts, all those things, especially nature, all those things were given more prominence and importance in the poetry or in the literature that we could see in this particular age, unlike the previous age, unlike the neoclassical age. All these things given more important, more than the form, the matter, the content was given more prominence. So use of imagination, freedom of thought and expression, and an idealization of nature. We could see all these things in Romantic literature. Imagination, freedom of thought and expression. See, it's not that if you want to express it in such a way, you can have the freedom. You have the liberty to express or write a poetry in a way that you want. Nobody is there to restrict you in Romantic Age. Nobody is there to criticize you for writing a poetry in using your own imagination, depicting your own emotion and instincts and your own themes and all. So there is a freedom of thought and expression, and the idealization of nature. So nature as a theme was so prominent in Romantic Age. And Romantic Age was inaugurated with the publication of lyrical ballads by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1798. That I already told you, this age, I mean the classical age, neoclassical age came to an end, and the Romantic Age got inaugurated or started with the publication of lyrical ballads by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1798. When it got published, actually in 1798, when lyrical ballads was published, there were no preface to lyrical ballads, but later in the second edition, in the second publication or second edition of lyrical ballads, Wordsworth actually wrote a preface to lyrical ballads, which came out in 1800. Okay, please do remember that too. So as we all know, whenever we think of Romantic Age, immediately poetry will come into our mind when we hear Romantic Age. So that means poetry was the towering artistic form of the age, but novel was also flourishing during this age, that we should not skip. So here we have first generation of Romantic poets as well as second generation of Romantic poet. Okay, first generation of Romantic poets and second generation of Romantic poets. Why such a division? See, in every other age we have poets, right? But there were no divisions like first generation or second generation kind of poets. Maybe there are some groups, but still there were no division like first generation Romantic poet and second generation Romantic poets. So why such a division? Maybe some of you must know the reason for the division, but let me tell you for those who don't know it. Why such a division is because, see, all these Romantic poets, they were influenced by French Revolution. French Revolution was happening towards the end of 18th century. So the first generation Romantic poets are those poets who actually first-handedly saw French Revolution and got inspired from it, from its ideals, from the ideals of the revolution, French Revolution as such. So they saw the impact. I mean, they saw the this first generation Romantic poets saw the French Revolution and its spirit first-handedly, and they got inspired by it, its ideals. So those poets are known as, or those poets are labeled as first generation Romantic poets. And who are they? William Blake, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Robert Southey. Okay, so these poets were known as first generation Romantic poets. Second generation Romantic poets. So obviously, if first generation Romantic poets are those poets who actually first-handedly saw and inspired from French Revolution, the second generation Romantic poets actually didn't get the chance to witness the French Revolution first-handedly, but they actually heard and they read about French Revolution, they heard about French Revolution, know the French Revolution, its impacts, they know the impacts of French Revolution, and they know the ideals of French Revolution, and they got, they got inspired by it. So that kind of poets are known as second generation Romantic poets. That's how such a division happened in Romantic age of poetry, or some Romantic poets. Second generation Romantic poets are Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, that is P.E.B. Shelley, then John Keats. So these three are the second generation Romantic poets. So I think now you know the reason for such a division. The age also saw the rise of the Gothic novel. Gothic novel means, kind of scary novels. There will be, curses will be there, ghost will be there, some ghostly things will happening in the story, and haunted castles will be there, hereditary curses will be there. So such kind of Gothic novels also saw a rise in this particular age. The eminent Gothic novelists were Anne Radcliffe and Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, we all must have studied in MA classes, Mary Shelley, or you must have read it. And Radcliffe and Mary Shelley are the two major Gothic novelists of the age. Then the age also had many prose writers such as William Godwin, who has written Political Justice. So William Godwin was the father of Mary Shelley, William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft. These are the parents of Mary Shelley, and Mary met P.B. Shelley, and P.B. Shelley is the one who wrote a preface to Frankenstein. Okay, William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft and Charles Lamb. Charles Lamb, his pen name was Elia. Elia, you know that. William Hazlitt, Thomas D. Quincy. So these are the prose writers of the age. So which are the chief novelists? So along with the Gothic novelists, there were some realistic novelists were so who all are writing, who were writing realistic novels. Okay, realistic novels. Fanny Burney, Walter Scott, Jane Austen. These are some of the chief realistic novelists: Fanny Burney, Walter Scott, and Jane Austen. And the age came into a closure with the death of William IV, and Queen Victoria ascended to the throne of England in 1838. Another political event happened. The then King William IV, he died, and after him Queen Victoria ascended to the throne of England in the year 1837. I have seen question about this particular year. Okay, when did Queen Victoria ascended to the throne of England? Okay, 1837, after William IV. So with this age came to an end. The age that comes after the Romantic age is the Victorian age. Victorian age is from 1837 to 1901. We all know that. What happened in 1837? Queen Victoria ascended to the throne of England. So from that year to 1901, we have the Victorian age. So the age is named after the reign of Queen Victoria, and Queen Victoria is the only monarch who could be who could see or who could witness that the age was named after her. So Queen Elizabeth was there, King James was there, many number of kings and monarchs or queens were there, but no other monarch, no other ruler could witness that their age was named after their name. But Queen Victoria is she is the only monarch who could see that her age, her time of her period of reign was named after her own name. Her own name means the Victorian age, Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria could see that while she was ruling over England. Now, from literary point of view, we could see that this age witnessed a growth in publication of periodicals and children's literature. So, England was becoming the most industrialized nation of the globe, in the entire globe, and it had its own problems in the form of conflicts, in the form of hygiene, in the form of class struggles, in the form of, urbanization, in the form of living agriculture. So, in that way, it had many political as well as economic, social, cultural problems were happening. But at the same time, we could see that as population was also increasing, people began to become more literate. People became more, since new middle class was formed as a result of industrialization, there were more audience for, written literature, especially in the form of periodicals and all. This it got many audience, the readership of periodicals were also increasing. So in that way, we could see that women also began to get education in order to be good wives, in order to be good mothers, manage their household and all. So they also got how to knowledge of reading, how to read and write. They also got their literacy rate was also began to rise. So in that way, for periodicals and all, women were the major audience and major readers of periodicals. So the growth of publication of periodicals and children's literature we could see in the Victorian age. And this age is also known for age of reforms. This is also known as age of reform because lot of reforms were there. Acts were passed in the government, in the parliament and all. Lot of reforms, n number of reforms were there, happened during the age of Victoria. So that's why this age is also known as age of reforms. So we could see that people began to question some of the basic beliefs of religion, and scientific scientific uh, you know investigation was also happening. So in many fields, in the field of genetics, in the field of revolution, especially about revolution, origin of species, so we got published towards the end of this age. So in this way science was developing, religion was there. So especially when science will go against certain accepted beliefs of religious beliefs, then what will happen? Naturally there will be a conflict, there will be adjustment problem with some of the notions of science and some of the notions of religion, with some other notions of religion. So conflicts between science and religion began to start from there. Then a critic known as Frederick Harrison, he made a statement about this age. It goes like this: the Victorian age, it is true, has no Shakespeare or Milton, no Bacon, no Hume, no Fielding or Scott, no supreme master in poetry, philosophy, or romance, whose work is incorporated with the thought of the world, who is destined to form epochs and to endure for centuries. Its genius is more scientific than literary, more historical than dramatic, greater discovery than is abstract thought. So Frederick Harrison, through this long statement, he actually states the mood of the age, or the genius, what type of thought we could find in this age. That's what he says. Even though the age contains novelists or poets or dramatists, but Victorian age, its intellectuality or its genius is not literary like any other previous ages. Like Elizabethan ages, where we have Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, Christopher Marlowe. So such great writers were there. In Neoclassical age also we could find Fielding, or in Romantic age we could find Scott, or many other number of poets, Jane Austen we could see. But it had no, even though literary persons were there, we could not find any supreme masters in any other field of literature. But its genius is more in scientific. That's because the mood of the age is different. Unlike the earlier ages, the mood, the genius, the way of thought process is also very different in Victorian age. And we could see some literary movements here in this age, which are known as Oxford movement, aesthetic movement, and pre-Raphaelite movement. Oxford movement, aesthetic movement, and pre-Raphaelite movement. So about these things we will discuss later. So aesthetic movement, art for art's sake. You must have heard this particular statement, this particular quotation, art for art's sake. There is no need that you value a literary text on the basis of something that actually stands out of that literary piece. The literary piece is self-contained and it should be valued for its own merits, not because it is discussing about something that is outside that literary work. You should not consider the background of the work. There is no need to have such information in order to value a particular literary piece. So that's all about aesthetic movement. And pre-Raphaelite movement, we all know that poets like Dante Gabriel Rossetti, William Morris, and Algernon Charles Swinburne, these poets belong to pre-Raphaelite movement. It actually sprouted from painting basically, and they actually aimed at more kind of natural kind of writing, more than kind of any artificial kind of, they were against any artificial kind of writing. It's like they have given more importance to clarity and naturalness. Naturalness, what is there naturally, you have to predict that, you have to portray that more than adding anything to it unnatural. So that's what they were actually proposing. About pre-Raphaelite poets and movement, we will be discussing elaborately after this overview. I mean, when we discuss about Victorian age in particular. Then the age also contained some of the celebrated novelists. They were Charles Dickens, George Eliot, Elizabeth Gaskell, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, William Makepeace Thackeray, and etc. Very, n number of novelists we could find. Charles Dickens, George Eliot, Elizabeth Gaskell, Thomas Hardy. I forgot to mention him, Thomas Hardy. So these are some of the celebrated novelists. And Oscar Wilde, he is the only celebrated dramatist of the age. Oscar Wilde. We could not see anyone else but Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde is only, he is the only celebrated dramatist of this age. So, importance of being earnest. We all know Oscar Wilde's famous play, Importance of Being Earnest. And the age also has some of its notable prose writers, such as Thomas Carlyle, Thomas Macaulay, John Henry Newman, and Walter Pater. So these are the notable prose writers of Victorian age. And the age came to an end with the death of Queen Victoria, happened in 1901. So the age starts with the reign, or age starts with the accession of Queen Victoria, and it ends with the death of Queen Victoria that happened in 1901. So please remember, that this age is also known as age of reforms, and the time period of this age, which is from 1837 to 1901. And also please remember some of the movements happened in this, literary movements happened during this age: Oxford movement, aesthetic movement, and pre-Raphaelite movement. And please remember some of the poets and novelists, as well as Oscar Wilde's name that you will of course remember, and prose writer's name as well. And the age ends with the death of Queen Victoria, monarch of the age, in the year 1901. So I think we can conclude this video with this, and in the next part we will be looking at the modern age as well as the postmodern age. So if you have any doubts, if you want to have any clarity in whatever I said, you can comment that on in the comment section. And also if you have any queries, suggestions, I'll be waiting for that also. If you like the video, please press the bell icon. If you want more contents related to literature to study for NTA Net, you can visit my website www.highpoint.in. so whatever I say in this video, there will be always a time restriction for us. So if you visit and subscribe to my website, you can also have a very systematic study for your UGC net preparation. So let me conclude, and let me meet you in the next video. Until then, bye bye. Thank you.